Welcome into another edition of Kickin' It. I'm Jeff Woody here with Grant Mahoney, Aiden
It's
White.
game week, Jeff.
Well, for somebody.
Football's
game
back.
For some. Iowa State doesn't play this week. Don't let Grant's enthusiasm confuse you. Iowa State still doesn't play for another Saturday. There's this Saturday.
Football's
week
back
0.
this
Football
weekend,
matters.
though.
Football happens. And then next weekend, Iowa State starts. As always, we're brought to you by Kelderman Manufacturing. Like we mentioned last week, tailgating season is nearly upon us. If you need something special for your tailgate, whether that's a grill or a grill or a grill, we talked about that. Grill for your food, grill for your truck, or grill for your mouth. I imagine Kelderman could do all of them. Kelderman.com. But football officially starts this week, and I am very, very excited to actually have something to pay attention to and care about. Although this year's week 0 matchups don't really matter too much about Iowa State and the Big 12, so I'm not super interested in them, but it's still football that you can watch on a Saturday that matters.
Let's go, man. Football is back. We're extracting honey on Friday. Football is on Saturday. The next week, Iowa State plays their first game on Saturday. I'll be there extracting honey on Sunday.
Hey,
does it get any better than that?
Doesn't get any better.
No.
Are you going to be able to eat the honey for the game?
I mean, yeah, I'll consume it. I just bought jars, so I've got.
Are they shaped like little bears?
No. Some of those ones are okay. I like glass. I like glass over plastic, so I'm not going to do like the squeeze tubes or anything. I like the wide mouth jars. So I bought. I'm bad with math. Whatever 48 times 2 is on two different sizes.
253.
It's not. No,
it's close enough.
You don't get an odd number from adding two even numbers together.
You know who's good at who knows really good at numbers?
Aiden.
Wait. Sure. I was going to say our guest. Aiden's also good at numbers. So we have, this is a recurring guest, friend of the program, Chris Fallica from Fox Sports, Bear Bets podcast, YouTube show. This is kind of like before I was excited for football season. I'm even more excited now just because of how much information this dude has. So I know that I tend to talk fast sometimes. You might need to put this one on like 3/4 speed if you can do that on your podcast playback, because man, when he gets going with numbers and information, it comes in an absolute fire hose, and it is super useful. So without any further ado, Chris Fallica from Fox Sports.
All right, and now we welcome on a return guest, a man who needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyways. When you are not seeing him guesting for us here on Cyclone Fanatic Kickin' It, you can also find him on Bear Bets, either his podcast or on YouTube, or on Fox Big Noon Kickoff. We welcome back to Kickin' It, Chris Fallica, the Bear. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing great with what's going on. This week has been a whirlwind of writing columns, doing my own pods, doing your pod, doing a bunch of others. So I know when that happens, we're getting into a very enjoyable time of the season with football approaching. But yeah, it kind of feels weird though. We were talking before we were recording about the Olympics, and it was great to have action during the day with these events going on, and now we have no more Olympics, but fortunately we do have tennis in Cincinnati, so there's always something to bet on.
Yeah, and we have week 0, so we've got football. We'll be here before we know it. Florida State and Georgia Tech playing in the game in Ireland, which Iowa State and Kansas State will be in next year. So we had you on last year in November, and I picked a bone with you because you had picked Iowa State to lose to Ohio, and unfortunately you were right. But Iowa State, I think that was probably the best thing that could have happened to them. The second half of that game and on, they had so many young guys and they played so well, really from that second half on, and they are returning the most production from anybody else in the country this year. I want to get your thoughts on, what are your thoughts on the Iowa State team this year?
I think this is the type of year where, remember in 2020 when I was getting shit from everybody about saying that Iowa State could be the team that wins the Big 12 and surprises and goes to the college football playoff, and there we were 20 yards from that ultimately happening in the Big 12 championship game. So I think we're in a similar spot. I don't think while they did finish strong last year, I still don't think there is a ton of national hype, even though my colleague Bruce Feldman kind of put the bullseye on them was saying that they could be the team in the Big 12 this year. But I agree. I think if you look at what they have coming back and what, like you said, the fact that Sama and Becht and the wide receivers got to play last year and they took their lumps early, and by the end of the year, they were one of the best offenses in the country. So you factor that with the defense that is always going to be difficult to move the ball on in this league. Like, I think they're right there. And I think you could take any of the top 7 or 8 teams maybe in the Big 12, and there's like no difference, little or no difference. Like, I don't see why everybody is just falling in line with Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State as the top 3. I don't see it that way at all. I think this is a league where you need to look a little bit deeper for a champion, whether it's Iowa State or whether it's UCF. Would not say, like, I play both Iowa State and UCF to win the Big 12 or make the college football playoff, whatever the longer the price was, because obviously the winner of the conference goes to the playoff. So I think Iowa State, UCF, I think you need to be looking at teams like that and not necessarily just saying, okay, Utah was Rose Bowl last couple of years. They're in the Big 12 now. They're going to be the best team with the quarterback back for his 7th year.
Cam Rising is
thank you. I'm like, what the hell is his name? Like, he's been around forever, and I just forgot his damn name.
I feel like between him and Aiden Bowman, like, I feel like they're probably older than like 10% of the NFL starting quarterbacks. So we actually kind of jumping off that point. Aiden, do you have the Big 12 odds that we can pull up? So we kind of wanted to go through, because this is Bears Bets. I mean, this is you. If there's anybody to talk to about kind of handicapping the Big 12, you already said that UCF and Iowa State are teams that you kind of want to look down the board for. We had Matt Berry on from ESPN a little bit ago. He was really high on West Virginia. And like, it feels like there's a lot of teams you can kind of dump in to this, like, could win it role. Yep. So we have the odds on the screen. So for those that are audio listeners, Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Kansas are your top 4, at Utah and Kansas State being 9.5 over under, Oklahoma State and Kansas 8.5, and then Arizona, Iowa State, UCF, Texas Tech, TCU, all of them are at 7.5. And then it's kind of a stacked as far as odds to make the playoff are kind of there. So looking at this list, where would you say your best value plays are? And where would you say who are the most overrated? I guess otherwise just handicapping the Big 12 from this list.
Yeah, I'm not sure Arizona is going to be the team that everybody thinks that they might be. I always get a little bit worried about those teams that come out of nowhere the previous year. Remember, they had like a 20-game losing streak prior to last year that they brought, I think, late in 22. And then last year they surprised everybody, pulled some upsets, and lost some other close games, and wound up winning 10 games, including their bowl. And they got Fafita to stay, and they got McMillan to stay, despite Jed Fish and his staff going to UW, to Washington. But I think the coaching change, it did lose like almost their entire defensive line rotation. I've heard the McMillan reports about him, broken foot. Like, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Then I hear he's out of practice running routes with the non-contact jersey on. But I don't know what the deal is there. But I think if you look at Arizona and go down that schedule, I don't think they were done any favors with some of the road games that they have to play in the conference. I actually was fortunate. I got Arizona under 8 early. So I don't think I would necessarily go under 7.5. But I do think how you could play this is there are head-to-heads out there, win totals, and Kansas and Arizona are pitted against each other in terms of a head-to-head. And I did play KU over Arizona in head-to-head wins, because I know Colton Nicky's gone, Matt Lubick is gone, but you bring in Jeff Grimes, who Lance Leipold's familiar with, and he's got some other guys that he's been familiar with still on the staff. Neal's back. Jalen Daniels, if he can stay healthy, that's the $1 million question. I know they don't have a home field per se this year, but I like KU. I think that the way that they have been building, they've stacked some good recruiting classes together. They have it like Iowa State. They got a ton coming back. I think people are kind of overlooking KU a little bit as well, just because assuming, okay, Bean is gone, so if Daniels go down, he's not there to step in and play. Coordinator and Lubick are gone. Okay, what's going to happen now? I'd be careful with that. I like KU going into this year, like I said, head-to-head against Arizona in terms of win total. And there's also, it's funny because this is a league that I actually played a lot of head-to-heads with. Like, you can take Iowa State head-to-head at plus 160 against Virginia Tech. Now, I think Virginia Tech has a chance to be pretty good in the ACC as well, but I do think they have a few more questions surrounding their team and some of the scheduled games that they have than the Clones have. And I took UCF in a head-to-head as well with SMU. SMU is a team that a lot of people, again, at plus money, at plus 160. SMU is a team going from the American to the ACC that I think people are kind of high on in that conference. But I worry about a team like that moving into one of the Power Four leagues, because if you look at SMU and what they've done their last 10 games against Power Four teams, they've lost 9 of them. And their recruiting rankings don't necessarily show that they're stockpiling talent in their recruiting classes to be able to step up and play consistently week in, week out against the bigger name teams. Now, look, the ACC is not a super league by any means, but we'll see. But I like UCF in this league as well. I think Harvey is a guy who might be able to wind up winning the Biletnikoff, or not the Biletnikoff, but the Doak Walker. He's 50-1. I threw some pizza money on him. And I think if you look at KJ Jefferson and Gus Malzahn's offense, that's going to be a problem. Malzahn's familiar with Ted Roof. They brought in a bunch of Power 5 transfers in on defense to shore that up. UCF is a team this year that I think you need to be wary of as well.
And that's not a place you want to go to. And I think because Utah, we talked about this with pretty much, I think the Utah writers and basically the new Big Four writers we talked about. Utah has to go to Orlando in November, and one of them likely is going to be in the conference championship kind of setup, as far as, if one of them wins, they make it, the other one lose, they don't. And you got to go to Orlando, and that might be whatever the space game, whatever they call it. I bet that's the space game, the bounce house. And whatever the game they kind of wear their like NASA uniforms. I bet that one, to me, I would say that's the one they're probably going to make this. So that is going to be a bonkers atmosphere. So from my perspective too, this is like taking the Iowa State glasses off a little bit. What makes Iowa State a little bit more attractive is the fact that they don't have, obviously any team's quarterback, you want to avoid losing any team's quarterback. But when you look at teams that are near the top, where you look at an Arizona, an Oklahoma State, you just getting comfy?
No, I had to pop my knee.
Okay. Look at Arizona, an Oklahoma State, a Utah. Those have, you call it like key man insurance, where if you lose somebody, if Ollie Gordon, Noah Fafita, or Cam Rising is somehow hampered for 2 or 3 games, it doesn't have to be like something and then Kansas with Jaden Daniels. It doesn't have to be something where they're out an extended length of time, but because this conference is so tight, so much of what they do runs through that person, that to me, Oklahoma State also, I'd put in that category of like real razor's edge between being an 11-1, 10-2 team and being like 7-5. Because if, let's say, God forbid, Ollie Gordon just gets rolled up on in a tackle, he sprains his ankle and misses a month. What are they going to do in those 3 or 4 games when they don't have the best running back in America? I don't know. Like, is Aiden Bowman going to go win him games? Depends on where it is in the schedule. And it feels like there's a few teams in the conference, like I said, like Arizona, Kansas, Utah, and Oklahoma State are the ones that come to mind, where you lose one guy for a month. And because of how tight this conference is, it is going to be really hard to recover from that all the way back to the top. And I mean, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. West Virginia also kind of feels like that. Was it Caleb Green? Whatever the name of the quarterback is. Garrett Green. It's a similar situation where it doesn't feel like they have a ton outside of that. So I don't know. Is there anyone else that I'm missing as far as like the kind of razor's edge between being really good and really bad pending health?
Yeah, I think, it's funny because West Virginia is a team that I'm curious about as well. Like, I think they have, I don't know what Matt said exactly, but they have the widest range of outcomes, I think, of anybody in this league, because last year, I don't think many people thought they were going to be very good. And I think a lot of people thought that Neil Brown was going to lose his job after the year. And then they surprised some teams and they had a good year. So I don't know if that was just kind of a one-off, some fluke wins, or if he's legitimately found something now and been able to kind of build his program and build his team the way he likes it. We'll find out week 1 against Penn State. I'll be there with Big Noon for that game. So that'll be interesting to see, because like you said, the Mountaineers are a team that could be 9-3, but would it be surprising if they went 5-7 and missed a bowl? Probably not. But I think what you hit on with the injuries is important, because I think that's a big reason why a lot of people are kind of just defaulting to Utah this year, because they lost Rising, they lost Keithy. They had some of the most unbelievable injury luck that they could have at the quarterback position last year, and they still wind up having a good year despite playing like 4 or 5 different quarterbacks at some point. So I think people are just assuming, and you would hope that neither Keith Eaton or Rising would get hurt again this year, but that's always a factor.
Now, going back to when we were looking at the Big 12, the graphic that was up there, you had mentioned something that I want to go back to for maybe newer bettors who may not know what you're referring to. You had said that you took UCF head to head versus SMU. Can you describe what you mean by that?
Yeah, there are certain bets out there where instead of necessarily betting like a specific, like betting a team total over under season wins, you can bet Team A versus Team B, which of those two teams will have more wins. So by saying I like UCF over SMU, that means at the end of the year, I think end of the regular season, UCF will have more wins than SMU. If they have the same number of wins, you push and you get a refund. I think at the end of the year, Iowa State will have more wins than Virginia Tech. And again, if they don't, I lose. If they have the same number, I get a refund. So it's just a way to kind of, if you don't get the number that you like in terms of a win total, a lot of times they'll put teams head to head. I'll give you another perfect example. Syracuse is a team that I'm pretty high on this year, getting Gadsden back at tight end after missing all last year. Kyle McCord from Ohio State goes there, and he's their quarterback now. I played their season win total over 6.5 months ago. Now it's 7.5 even in some places. So I can't suggest that you go out and play that. But what you can do is they're matched up in a head-to-head season regular season win bet with Wisconsin. And you're in the area where we get a lot of Wisconsin talk, Big Ten talk as well. I'm not sure Wisconsin's going to be like an 8-win team this year. And if I think already Syracuse is going to win 7, then I'm thinking at worst, I'm going to push that bet and have a really good chance to win it. If you look at Wisconsin's schedule, they have some brutal road games. They have to play Oregon as well in the Big Ten. Like, I don't think their schedule projects to 8 wins at all. I worry about, are we going to see the Tyler Van Dyke that we saw as a freshman at Miami where he offered so much promise? Or are we going to see the one that got benched last year? Like, I don't know. So I think it might take a little bit of a while before Luke Fickell and that Wisconsin offense really are what he ran at Cincinnati and what Tony Longo want to run.
So to kind of follow up on that, when you make those kind of bets, a 2-part question: are you able to pick like Iowa State? Are you able to pick who you want to pin them against?
No, they have these are prearranged, and they like to put usually teams that are similar win total strata again, like they're Georgia versus Ohio State win totals. You got Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State. They like putting teams like that together just because of keeping the juice down and keeping.
I was going to say
teams that
Alabama, Houston. I'm going to take
exactly.
Alabama in that one.
Well, and no free ads here.
Oregon versus Temple. How about that? But you know what? I'd lay. Seriously, what type of price would you lay? There is zero chance that Temple is going to have more wins. Temple might be the worst team in the country this year. I actually played Temple under 2.5 wins, but I'd love to imagine what a price would be. Oregon minus like 100,000 versus Temple.
You got to lay your house to get $10.
Yeah, exactly. Here's my mortgage.
No free ads here on Kicking It. But what platform are you usually putting those bets on? Okay, are they available on DraftKings and FanDuel?
Yeah. I'm in Connecticut, and when I'm in Connecticut, I only have access in terms of the legal books with FanDuel and Connecticut here, just because it's a number of licenses they give out. They are Fanatics here, but last year, Fanatics decided to put a whole lot of bad soccer team totals up during the Prem and everything, and I realized they put a lot of bad team totals up, and I kind of did well for 10 days, and then they decided to basically say, okay, you can bet $10 now. So
you counted cards in soccer.
Exactly, pretty much. But the great thing about my job is I get to travel to Iowa. I get to travel to Pennsylvania. I get to travel to Michigan.
Hey.
I get to travel to Arizona. I get to travel to Ohio, Indiana, all these states that have BetMGM, Bet Rivers, Caesars, William Hill, all of the other legal books out there. So when I get to other states, I have opportunities to get prices and markets from other books that I don't have here. And then you can always play the arbitrage game where you're basically guaranteeing yourself some money, which they don't like that either, but
You got to work.
We try to keep that to a minimum, just because I don't want to fracture any relationships, or I want to keep my limits and my name good where it's not tarnished yet.
Okay, to bring it back to football a little bit, where you talked about West Virginia, Penn State, and because we kind of just jumped off Wisconsin to the Big Ten, going back last year, it is arguable that the most significant game regarding the playoff picture happened in week 2 when Alabama and Texas played and Texas won that game. Because after that point, then it became, well, you can't put Alabama in over Texas. Well, you can't put Georgia in over Alabama. Well, tough. Now we have to do this. So Texas. I think this year
you don't have your quarterback. You're not the same team that you were for those 13 games at FSU. Sorry, you're out.
Sorry, tough.
I had no problem with it.
Yeah. So now going into this year, it doesn't feel like there's necessarily that, like, if you win the conference, automatically in. If you finish second in the Big Ten or SEC, you're in. If you finish third in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're in. It starts to get a little bit hairier when you start getting into the second team in the Big 12 versus like the third or fourth team in the SEC/Big Ten. And where those come into play are teams like games like Iowa and Iowa State, really big this year for the sake of measuring conference to conference. West Virginia, Penn State, really big conference to conference. So question number 1, are there any other games that I'm missing regarding like Big 12 games outside of, or that go outside the conference, your non-conference games that will have potentially an impact? And then the second thing is, let's say that Penn State loses to West Virginia, and then West Virginia goes 8-4, not even in the playoff picture, but the second place team in the Big 12 is 10-2. Penn State is 10-2. What happens in that situation? So first off, am I missing any other games? And second off, in this hypothetical situation where Penn State lost to a Big 12 team, does the Big 12 get 2?
I think UCF plays Florida. That's one. I don't think Oklahoma State has a game. Arkansas, they play, but Arkansas isn't expected to be good. K-State has nobody. Yeah, that's a good point to bring up with the conference versus conference, because I don't necessarily know if the committee actually looks at it that way in turn, like in the NCAA selection with 64 teams. I think when you're getting down to the nitty gritty, I think probably they do look at some of those interconference matchups, and they probably should when you're like, you come that far. You obviously need something to break the tie. But I think with the what was the second part of your question again?
So the situation being, if West Virginia beats Penn State and they're
Penn State would be in. Penn State would absolutely be in it. It tend to do it. I guess that would mean that Penn State at 10-2 with a loss to West Virginia would have either a win over Ohio State or someone else really good, and that would ultimately, I think, outweigh them. But that's going to be like, I think if you look at the preseason poll this year, like of the top 12 in the preseason AP poll, you got 9 Big Ten SEC, you got 1 ACC, you got 1 Big 12, and you got I don't think I think the ACC, you're looking at 1 or 2. Someone is going to have to go 10-2 in the Big 12. That maybe I'm not necessarily thinking 10 right now. I think there's so many teams that are good teams, but the fact that there's so many good teams and your conference is deep means you have more opportunities to lose, and that's going to hurt the overall record and hurt the overall perception. Like, it's funny you said Penn State, because I bet Penn State to make the playoff at like minus 142 it was, just because I don't think there's a team out there in the Power 4 leagues right now that some people would argue Iowa, that the playoff expansion and the elimination of divisions and the conference expansion did a solid than Penn State. If you go back, I think over the last 8 years, I think it's 6 times they wound up in the top 12 entering the bowl season. They don't play Michigan this year. They do play Ohio State. Like, they're going to, like, I'm not necessarily a Drew Aller guy, but I think with the new coordinators coming in, I think hopefully he'll stop seeing ghosts. Their defense was the best defense in the country last year. Tom Allen, who was in Indiana, is now their defensive coordinator. So I'd be surprised if Penn State wasn't 10-2 and in the college football playoff. But yeah, that's going to be the conversation at some point during the year. Like who loses the Big 12 championship game, and are they better than Big 10 4 or SEC 5 or ACC 2? Because like outside of like I'm not sold that Miami, Florida State, Clemson, 2 of those 3 teams are going to get in either.
Penn State's kind of their running back Singleton might be like a dark horse. Doak Walker.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, he's good. And if their offensive line continues to play as well as he did last year, and Aller can take some of the pressure off their running game, yeah, he could have a Katron Allen, the other kid, is really good as well.
Yeah. So kind of pivoting back to the Big 12 a little bit, we've kind of gone national, kind of going back to the Big 12. You mentioned Utah is kind of the favorite, and they're good. I'm not completely sold on them, although Jeff and I did play against them in 2010. They beat us like 60-something to 13.
Shaky Smithson.
Beat the shit out of us.
Shaky Smithson.
Who do you see playing in Arlington in the Big 12 championship game?
Oh boy, I could. As I'm looking at, it's funny. I have my page open right now. Like I said, you could take 8 teams probably and shake them around and come up with a combination, and I'd believe it.
And we've got the Big 12 championship game winner odds pulled up on the screen here too for those visual listeners.
Are we sold on Kansas State? Should they be co-favorite?
No. You opened up a can of absolute shitworms.
I listened to a few of your pods, Bear, and you had mentioned that returning production is obviously a huge thing that you want to take into consideration, but losing production is maybe something that's a bigger determining factor. And when you lose defensive linemen and offensive linemen, those are tough to replace. And Kansas State has to replace 4 or 5 of their offensive linemen,
Cooper Beebe, who is potentially the best guard in America,
and their tight end, who is one of the better tight ends in America.
It was great.
I'm not sold that Avery Johnson is a good quarterback. Jeff has his own opinion. I think he's a glorified running back, who can, chuck it like Uncle Rico is what I keep saying. I don't even go as far as say he chucks it like Ronaldo. You ever seen that? Or Conor McGregor?
Good. Not good.
Phew-wee. But back to my question though. Yeah. Big 12. Who do you think you see playing in the Big 12 championship game?
I will go. Of course, I'd love to see Iowa State and UCF play in the Big 12 championship game, because that will mean I'm guaranteed winning one of my bets. I do think ultimately.
This was not a question to bait you and to try to say.
I know. I'm gonna say Utah and UCF. How about that? I'm not gonna go full homer here on you guys. I still want to be able to have the keys to the city and when I come into town, and I'm going to try and get Big Noon this year.
I was thinking of that too, because Iowa State plays Kansas State last game of the year with huge implications on it. I think that'd be a great game for you to.
Is that Ohio State Michigan weekend though?
That's
probably.
Yeah,
Iowa State, Kansas State.
Tell my executives that. Tell my boss. The hell with Ohio State, Michigan. We're going to Ames.
That's right.
Armageddon.
This is the first time that Iowa State will have 10 wins in a season. We have to be there to witness it, and for them to win the game and go to the Big 12 championship game. One question I want to ask you is to kind of pivot away from everything we've talked about. Is there a team in America that most of America is rooting to lose more than Colorado? And why do they do this to themselves?
I think, I'm trying to think if there is one. Like, I still think there's like a little like Texas residual out there.
Yep, that lives here. Yep.
But yeah, I would agree. I think Colorado obviously is that firestorm team. But you're right. It's just everything that has gone on off the field, and just why can't you just kind of sneak in, be quiet? And then the problem I have with it is all you did last year was promote yourself, videos, 60 minutes, film crews. And now this year, like, you're not going to do an interview because you didn't like what someone said. Like, all you did last year was rely on the media to build your program up. And here's the access. Here's what we're doing. Coach Prime with the glasses and the hat. And now it's like, no, I'm not talking to you. Like you can't have both ways. But it's funny because someone I respect was telling me a few weeks back, like his looking at like the starting lineups for offense, defense, top 22, and he said that he thought Colorado had the best top 22 in the league on paper. I didn't buy it. I mean, I would agree that they probably do have the two best players in the league in Shedeur and Travis Hunter. Some people may disagree with that, but yeah, I just, there's so many unknowns there. And I think we're just going to bring in a bunch of guys who've never, like Warren Sapp, who've never coached before, and some other guys. And here we are. But yeah, the article that came out a couple of weeks ago was pretty damning. And again, you don't want to necessarily believe everything that's in there, because I'm sure there's some ex-players and ex-coaches that have a grudge, and it's probably not all is true and as damning as maybe it was made out to be. But yeah, I think anytime you're putting a program like this on, I don't want maybe a pedestal, or giving them this treatment every week, you're being discussed when your performance on the field doesn't necessarily warrant it. It's going to ruffle some feathers and cause a lot of people to be against you and hope that you wind up 4-8 or even worse.
I think they want to be hated. I think they want that.
Us
against the world.
But yes, you do. But this is a lot different than, I'm just going to use the example because it's my alma mater. This is a lot different than Miami 1988, when they didn't give a shit that everyone hated them. They would just go out, win games, blow people out. It was like, okay, well, you don't like it, do something about it. This is a team that they're kind of bringing this on us against the world. Look out now, and you're giving up 60 points to Stanford. Like this,
Miami could back it up.
Okay, so to come, we kind of talked a little bit about the playoff, and we talked a little bit about the Big 12. Aiden, do you have playoff odds at all? Question. Oh, efforting. Okay, so even without the odds necessarily, if you were to give the top 12 teams an automatic berth, who are the ones that you're expecting to kind of handicap the playoff? Because I'd imagine we have, SEC and Big Ten are going to get the big chunk of it.
Yep.
But who inside of each of those conferences? And then I guess where do the rest of them stack out? Because I think to explain the playoff setup for the listener who might not be aware of it, here's my best understanding of it: it's your Big Ten champion, automatic bid; SEC champion, automatic bid; ACC champion, automatic bid; Big 12 champ, automatic bid; non-Power 5.
And those are the top four.
And those are the top four seeds.
And they all get a bye.
And they all get a bye right away. Then the fifth team would be, or whomever, is the group of 5 winner. So the highest ranked non-Power 5 conference. So last year would have been Liberty.
Your Boise's, Liberties,
Tulane's, those kind of schools. So and then after that, the next 7 teams are at-larges based on the CFP rankings, like they would have had last year. So if the highest ranked non-Power 5 team is ranked like 21st, they get an automatic bid. Doesn't really matter. So you can't say, hey, the top 12 from last year, that's the playoff. It's because you have to kind of shimmy it around a little bit. So who are the teams in those 12 who are the 12 teams that you expect to see in the playoff? And then I guess we'll give you 4 honorable mentions. So 16 total teams that you would expect to see in the playoff.
Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Penn State. Those 8, I would say for sure.
So if we time that out, is that 4-4 of Ohio State, or excuse me, of the Big Ten SEC?
That is 4-4. That was 3-4-1 Notre Dame.
Okay, Notre Dame.
So I got 4 SEC, 3 Big Ten, and then Notre Dame is 8. Okay. I think, and then that obviously does not include the ACC champ, which will probably come from the group of Florida State, Clemson, and Miami. Then I think in the Big Ten, I'm not sold. Michigan is going to be a 4th team from the Big Ten. I think they might have a little bit of a down season. So like the Big Ten could be the league that only winds up with 3. And if that happens, I'm sure they will not be happy at all. But like there's a kind of a drop off I think there's a drop off from the top 3 to Michigan. And then I think there's a drop off from Michigan to like where 5, 6, 7, 8 would be. Like I'm not sold like USC and Iowa and Wisconsin. That group of teams really are in that playoff strata.
Okay, so then we have Big 12 champ, because that would be
Yep. Mhm.
10,
Iowa State, yeah.
right? Iowa State,
Yep.
naturally.
Yep, exactly.
And then we got 2 teams left. We have the group of 5. Who's the group of 5 team that you would expect to see?
Everyone's I'm not sold it's going to be Liberty this year. I think that they embarrassed themselves so badly in that game, and the committee had egg on their face. Like, even if they're undefeated this year, I think the committee is going to take a longer look at their schedule and be like, all right, come on, give me a break. But I think if you look at Boise, I think has more talent than anyone in the Mountain West. I'll give you a team that no one really is mentioning. A team that could be a surprise team to reach the playoff is Rice. I think Mike Bloomgren has kind of built some things down there. EJ Warner, Kurt Warner's son, transferred in there from Temple. He's a really good quarterback. I think Rice out of the American could be a sneaky team, just because I'm not sold on Memphis, and that Memphis has a bad defense. I mean, I know you're familiar with going to Memphis there for the bowl game, but yeah, I'm not sold Memphis is going to be this automatic shoo-in in that league as well. But so if you're looking for a little bit, I get why you'd want to say Liberty or Boise, and I think Liberty, Boise winning their leagues are probably a good thing. But I think Rice is someone that you might want to maybe take a peek at as well.
Boise has a speaking of like out of conference games, they've got a big out of conference game week 2. They go to Oregon, so that could be a big one there for them.
And they probably won't win that game, but you figure with John T, the running back, and Malachi Nelson coming in from SC, Dirk Cutter back in Boise as a coordinator, they don't even play the best teams in the regular season on their schedule in the Mountain West. So I think Boise's a pretty. No pick is safe, but I think Boise's a pretty good bet to wind up winning that league.
What happens with the Pac-12? There's only 2 teams.
It is what it is. They're just kind of basically playing an independent type schedule. Yeah, they're not. You will not be hearing from either of the Pacific Northwest schools this year in terms
they just
of
play each other 11 times.
And when does that
exactly play each other? Play Idaho. I am happy that Oregon and Washington are continuing their rivalries with those two teams, because that is a very passionate, emotionally wound up rivalry out there that they have in the Civil War in the Apple Cup. So I'm happy that those rivalries did not go away, even though the Pac-12 did.
All right, I got one last question. So Iowa State's over/under is 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
You took the over, obviously.
You did.
If I was to set I guess, where is there a number that I guess, what's the win total that you expect from Iowa State? Because it's over 7.5.
10.
Where would you set your expectations for Iowa State's win total? And then from that, where are the losses? Now, I don't know if you don't necessarily have to have the schedule on hand, but
I'm looking at it right here.
Okay. Where's Iowa State's win total? Where are the losses?
I think the losses are at Kansas, at Utah, potentially UCF. And I think they're going to beat Iowa and Kansas State. So I'll say 9-3.
There we go. If it's a 9-3 season, that's a good season.
You'd be happy with that?
Iowa State, I believe, has won 9 games, if I'm correct, 5 times. Not even. Less than that in their histories, or in Iowa State's storied football history. So I think you may want more by the end of the year and be like, we're this close to the playoff. But like realistically, if right now someone said you can have 9 wins this year, and if any Iowa State fan would turn that down, it feels like a big gamble. But so I would be happy with it. Maybe would want more, but would be happy with it.
9 wins, you win at Iowa and you beat Kansas State in the last game of the year. I think I would hope that people there would take that.
I had said last year that this year Iowa State would win 10 games, but I kind of redacted that for a little bit and said I think they'll go 9 wins in the regular season and then win their 10th game in the bowl game. So I think what the bowl game is. So
that's all I got.
Now what happens if you lose in Iowa City? Like what's the mood and the feeling around the town and the program?
It depends.
That's not going to happen. So
it's not going to happen. But it depends on how it happens. So like if you go to Iowa City and you lose 17-16, but there are some fluke stuff that happened where like
every year,
which some weird thing happened, and you go, man, that close, that sucks. You got to deal with your coworkers that kind of trash talk you and whatever, and some relative that went to Iowa, some relative that went to Kirkwood as an Iowa fan. But you have it's not that bad because Iowa's usually pretty good. But if you lose that game in a way that like you were outplayed, which hasn't happened in a really long time, where you just, since like we were there in like 2010, when you're just way outplayed. If that's the case.
What about the game that game day was there for? There's
twice. There's the 6-hour delay game, and then there was the 4 interception game where Purdy
the four interception game. I never really felt like you guys were going to win that, unfortunately.
I think Brees fumbled on like the 6, and then Jack Campbell scooped and scored for a touchdown.
Yeah, and then there was a pick 6 as well, I think, and it was like, oh, that was last year. Never mind. But anyway, it was
stupid stuff.
But I think it depends on how the game goes, and if you look good and there's just some weird mistakes, that sucks, but move on. But I don't think, to me, that Iowa is going to have recovered enough. So special teams wise, Torrey Taylor and Cooper DeJean, those two are both gone. They were so much a part of their winning success formula that those two being gone is a huge, huge problem for them. And I don't think their offense takes as much of a step forward as everyone wants them to. But
they have no receivers.
If they do, it's going to be until later in the year, once they've kind of figured out how to gel under Lester, if they do end up taking a step forward. So you're without your 2 best special teams player and your best tackling corner, potentially the best tackling corner I've ever seen in Cooper DeJean. So you're missing 2 main pieces on special teams. Your offense, if it gets better, is only going to get better for the second half of the year. And your defense is still going to be really good. But what other pieces do you have? I don't know how much juice they're going to have. If you were to play this game in November, different result. I think Iowa's offense does figure it out by November to be adequate. I don't think they're going to be really good right now. So I don't know. This is just biased, I guess, a little objective, but I think Iowa State has more juice early in the season than Iowa does.
Yeah, you're biased, but you're making good point, and you're making points that I've kind of thrown out there as well. Like, we're still talking, this offense is going to be revitalized, rejuvenated, or whatever, but you're still dealing with the same players that you had.
You got Luke Lachey.
There are no wide receiver threats there. There's a reason Cade McNamara was benched at Michigan and he left, because he wasn't the type of quarterback that Jim Harbaugh wanted there. Like, and the other thing which I've said to people is, if the offense indeed is improved and is scoring points left and right, and they're in these higher scoring games potentially, what does that mean for your defense? Because I wonder, like, the give and take there, like the way they played offense kind of fit with the defense. Like, will the offensive improvement kind of mean that the defense maybe is on the field a little bit more? Maybe they're facing some more drives. Maybe they aren't as good as they've been in the past. I think it's a give and take, and then what happens indeed if the defense isn't as good, or Kirk gets rid of Brian and their offense isn't as good. How are things going there? You wanted me to get rid of my son, now we got this, and we stink even worse.
I think it's. I think their offense it's still a Kirk run offense, and so I think the only difference we'll see is that instead of being statues the entire length of the play clock, Iowa's gonna have more pre-snap motion. I think last year I heard that they only had motion on 6% of, like, pre-snap motion on 6% of their plays. So I think that's going to be the only difference. But there is a reason why.
Imagine being a defensive coordinator going into a game knowing that you weren't going to be dealing with.
They're going to come out, and that's what it is.
Shifting. It's like, okay, I got him, and no wonder you're the worst offense in the country.
I think, there's a reason why when Cade McNamara left, Michigan fans weren't too upset. They said, listen, he's not a great quarterback, but he is elite at handing the ball off. And so, outside of Lachey, I don't think Iowa really has any receivers.
Their running backs are good. Their running backs are good. Tight ends are good, but it is Iowa. I think the thing that is what's interesting to me, and as far as like the example of what to do, or what they'll look like is, so last year against Penn State. Now, granted, Penn State's defense is super, super good. But Iowa's defense was on the field for 45 minutes of that game. I think they gave up 38 points. So let's say, to your point, is if they do end up on the field more, just statistically, points per drive, have more drives, give up more points. Can the offense in those situations match point for point? I think Lachey's a draft pick. I think they have 2 running backs between Patterson and Johnson that are really good. Can McNamara be that guy? I don't know. I don't think so. And if they do, but again, to at least my thoughts on this, middle of October, they're going to be a better team than they are in the early part of September. I don't think they're going to be I don't think there will be enough offense in early September to beat Iowa State as long as Iowa State doesn't shoot their own foot off. That's my thought.
24-13 Iowa State.
I'd sign up for that.
All right.
And Iowa's going to go 8-4.
Can we get 7-5 out of Iowa? So I played underrated plus money.
We'll take it. Aiden, can you make that happen? Make the win total happen? All right, got it. He's nodding yes. All right. I think we've taken plenty of your time. We appreciate it, and we'll look to for sure have you again, hopefully before basketball season, at the end of football season. So we appreciate you appreciate you being on.
No worries at all. I'm happy to be on with you guys, and good luck this season. Hopefully we'll catch up during the season down the road.
Thanks again. Yeah, and like Jeff said, thanks again for joining us. Glad we didn't scare you off the first time.
Man, Chris Fallica, he has so much energy, and I think what amazes me, this is the second time we've had him on. We've kind of texted throughout the football and basketball seasons. The amount of just sheer volume of information he's able to keep in his head is mind-boggling.
And just pull it like that.
And just right away, just players from teams, win totals, opponents. I mean, just coordinators. Just the amount of information he keeps in his head is just bananas.
I'm glad that he brought up Rice. I'm gonna dive into that. I have no idea. Rice is not a team I ever would have thought of from like a group of 5 team to make it. They weren't on the screen, on the visual that Aiden had pulled up. I'm gonna look into it though to see what has Rice got going on that I don't know about.
It was fun. I mean, UCF, I'm down. I would say UCF is a team that I would be towards the top of the league with. And I don't know, just to summarize what I feel like the conversation is put 8 teams in 8 ping pong balls like the NBA draft lottery, and you just spin it around and pick 2 of them. And that's the teams that are playing for the Big 12 title. And that's about the odds that you have to pick them. So Utah, Kansas State, they may be, quote, the favorites, but I feel like they have the same odds as being the ping pong ball that comes out as everybody else, as the rest of those 8 teams do.
We kind of touched on it too in the podcast that I don't wish anybody gets hurt, but if someone does get hurt, if Cam Rising gets hurt or Jalen Daniels gets hurt or Avery Johnson gets, like, whatever, if there is an injury that's to a significant, Ollie Gordon, if there's an injury to a significant guy, then that team's season could essentially be over because the Big 12 is so close and might just cannibalize itself this year.
Yeah, I don't know, but we got week 0 this week, and
let's go.
Football officially back this week,
and Iowa State will be week 0 next year. But
in top of the morning to you,
we'll get there when we get there.
Top of the morning. That's
all I've got. Thank you to all of our loyal listeners who are still listening. Thanks to Chris Fallica again for jumping on with us. And as always, remember, adopt, don't shop.